Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our first speaker wasn't with us, so this is now the first of the inaugural 15 by 15 talks at the OECD. Basically, the format is rather a bit like a TED Talk. It's short and punchy. We've got 15 minutes of our speaker talking, and then we've got another 15 minutes of you, the audience, asking questions. If you don't ask questions, I will ask them, so get in there. I'll be going around with a roving mic on this side of the room. There'll be people going around at the back, and we will prod you to make sure you do, in fact, ask those questions. There's also another way in which to feed back. It's on your seat, you'll see these cards. This tells you basically how to comment. You can do that in two ways, through Twitter, by using the hashtag OECD4. This is room number 4, OECD4. And also Wissembly, and you can use the app, and the instructions are on there. You can use that for comment, but this isn't a private feedback form. If you don't like the talk, don't write that unless you want everyone to see that comment on the board right behind us during the talk. It could get awkward if you say, this was really rubbish. Which I'm sure, of course, it won't be. Our speaker for the next 15 minutes is John Forster. He's going to speak about connecting through cognitive intelligence. John worked for Tesco and now is Strategic Director for Telefónica's Global Data Unit. And very excitingly, he's going to give us a demo. These things are always on tenterhooks, so you never know where they're going to work. But hopefully, I've been assured this is all set up properly, and it will work entirely smoothly. John, where are you? Yes, he's smiling. This is good. This is good news. And we're going to get a demonstration of aura, or aura in Spanish. I'll leave that to him to explain. OK, so could you give a warm round of applause to John Forster, please? Thank you.
Morning, everyone. We have sound, we have slides. If we could switch to the presentation, I'll kick off. I work for a telecoms company, so I'm very used to talking about megabytes and gigabytes. And when I joined a few years ago, I look at the amount of data we ship around our networks, and it's about 50 times as much as it was just a few years ago. So this is an exponential change in how we deal with that and how we cope with that is a real challenge. But today it's not about megabytes and gigabytes. Today it's about information and insights and how we can use those to help customers and how we can use those to benefit society. So let's start with some simple observations. Today, digital life is life itself, right? There's not really that divide there used to be. Everything we do is capturing data about us, telling personal stories about us. But we're not necessarily clear which companies have what information, how it's being used, or is it benefiting us? And that's one of the real challenges. It's a particularly interesting time because we have almost an alignment of the planets. The data is much more relevant and serious applications than it's ever been before. The economics of processing it and generating even real-time insights from that information have come down by many orders of magnitude, even over the last few years. And the application of things like machine intelligence, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and what I'm going to talk about in a minute about cognitive intelligence, how we help take better decisions through machines, makes this a truly exciting space. So we don't hear a lot about the great stories, the useful things that come out of data. So I'd like to spend a little bit of time talking about those. Data can relate to us as individuals, in which case there's obviously important privacy concerns that we need to be aware of. It can be anonymized, and it's still really useful. And it can be anonymous insights, crowd insights, the information about population movements and things like that. And all of these are really powerful things to enrich individuals' lives, to help businesses make better decisions and deliver better services, and to help society. And let's go through a number of those. So what's perhaps surprising is how data enables us to do quite unexpected things with it. You'll be very familiar with how personalization is getting much better. The machines seem to know you in ways that they didn't before. The idea of using population movements to, and we've done work on this ourselves, you can forecast where incidents are going to happen. So for instance, the emergency services pre-position ambulances and emergency response where the weather data, the crowd data tells you incidents are likely to be. And that's really important because if we can reduce the time it takes to get to heart attack victims, stroke victims, car accidents, of course the survival rates and everything go up dramatically. We can also use that similar crowd anonymous information to help businesses make better decisions, to help cities plan infrastructure, transport companies plan routes and movements, and so on. But perhaps some of the more surprising areas around medicine and health. So our own research into just how we use mobile phones and how we talk about things has revealed some very interesting insights. For instance, if you have Parkinson's disease, you can't cure that yet, but early intervention allows the treatment to be very effective. Well, it turns out just by analyzing your voice through a phone call, the machine intelligence can now detect it earlier than previous tests were. If you have bipolar disease, where you swing between elated and manic up moments and depressive down moments, then again, we can manage that much more effectively by understanding from your data use, your frequency of messaging, even the length of your texts, whether you're moving between one or the other of those phases and intervene and make it better for you. And we've done work in Latin America around how mobile data, again at the anonymous level, can understand population movements and help authorities and NGOs intervene in things like Zika and earlier H5N1, because you can understand how movement restrictions are impacting populations and so on. And the list is long. Financial services. Who'd have thought your mobile data could improve your banking relationship? Well, in Latin America, 60 or 70% of our customers don't even have a banking relationship. So if a child falls ill or they want to start a business, they have no access to official forms of finance. So it's very expensive or unavailable. Mobile credit scores open that up to help development, help people avoid falling victim to loan sharks, and a really empowering use of data. Amazing stuff. The problem is there's always a bad guy in any good story. And the challenge is people, if you ask them what does data mean, they don't list all the things I've just been telling you about. They talk about intrusive adverts, they talk about hacking, they talk about phishing and malware and all these kind of things. 3%, a striking number, when you ask people, do they trust the organizations with their data, only 3% of them have no concerns. 70% or so don't know why and how people are using their information. Shocking, frankly, a failure by the corporate sector, a failure by governments to give people the trust they can share data and put it to all the good uses we just talked about. Regulators are responding, and we have in the European Union GDPR and shortly e-privacy coming into play, which helps to put customers in control of their data. And that's a good thing. It talks about informed consent. People have to be actively aware and opt into these things. But people still don't trust companies. And why is that? Well, I love this quote. It's not mine, but the biggest lie on the internet is, I have read and understood and accept the terms and conditions. Right? Impossible. Of course you haven't. Right? We'd spend all day doing it. These numbers are from a Carnegie Mellon study quite a few years ago now, but it must have got worse. If you looked at the terms and conditions of every website you ever visited, every app you downloaded, it would take you 75 days a year to read them all. Just ridiculous, right? So if we comply with these new regulations by simply adding more paragraphs, that's not helping customers. So is there a better way? Well, we think that what's missing is trust. Because if you don't trust a company, or an organization, you keep your data locked away. And data on a hard drive is worthless, right? It's only valuable when it's put to use, when it's shared, when it's used to deliver these better experiences or these societal benefits. And our stance is slightly different to what we've done and other companies are doing, because our 350 million customers pay us for the services that generate their data on Telefonica. So we don't need to sell that. We don't need to spam them with adverts they really don't want to see. We're able to start with the idea that that data is their data, and we should use it to help them. Seems somewhat obvious, really, but it's not the way it works today. It's all about operations, it's all about advertising, and unsurprisingly, customers aren't very excited by that. The other idea is that customers want to be in control, but they don't want to manage the minutiae of opt-ins and opt-outs and permissions and apps and all this kind of thing. So the cognitive intelligence idea says, well, if we know all this about our customers, how can we use machine learning, how can we use AI to take away all of that pain and hassle and make it super simple for them? And that's what we're proposing to do. So I'm going to introduce you to something called Aura, or Aura, again, depending on whether you're in Spain or the UK. The important thing is this is an idea. It's in the cloud. It's not a thing. It can be tackled from a feature phone in Latin America, and you can text it. In London, I can ask my Amazon Echo, and it will talk to Aura and answer my questions. I'm going to show you an app on a smartphone today, but don't think of it as an app. This is just the channel to talk to Aura and answer my questions. So let's have a go. So what I'm doing here is you can see the... it doesn't know my fingerprint now. Here we go. Let's wake it up. So we start with the basics, because we couldn't do complicated stuff because customers don't trust us today. So how do we do something super simple that helps customers? Well, the simplest thing and surprising thing is we spend the order of €1 billion a year answering calls to customer service. And around 20% of those calls are about really basic things about our service. You know, what's my bill? What's my bundle? It takes 5 or so minutes to answer a call. It costs money and it costs all of us time. So how about we could do this instead? Show me my bill. Here we go, it's working. This is good news. So those simple things, can you see it? Yes, here we go. So these simple things are actually really complicated. So all of that data about us as users is stored in the cloud, and the artificial intelligence, the cognitive intelligence, is using that to make better decisions for our customers. Simple stuff. But we can look across all of our different services. So I can say, what's in my bundle? So what are the things that I have? Oh, didn't hear me finish the sentence. Let's try again, sorry. What's in my bundle? There we go. So it's heard my voice, it's turned it into text, it's understood the intention behind it, and it's gone away and found the information. And now I can interact with Aura and I can see these things. But it looks across all of our services. So I can also say something about my TV service or something about my Wi-Fi router. And these are things that are really hard to do. I'd normally have to call customer service. So if I said, recommend me something to watch. So there, it's knowing what I like, it's knowing what I spend time looking at. There we go. And it's that's lucky, isn't it? It could have been embarrassing. It's looking at things that are available across all of our different services. But the other thing is, that's the basic stuff, right? How do we give people the trust to engage with us and to share this data in the first place? We can't have 2,500 word terms and conditions. It just doesn't work, as we all know. So what we have is a concept called a timeline. Show my timeline. So here we're trying to avoid any surprises. Total clarity about everything that's going on. So when I signed up, if I go right back to the beginning, this is a demo account, so only a few days old, you can see what's Movistar collecting. the data that is generated, and that's associated with my subscription. But also, everything I do, let's look for some highlights. So we don't want unpleasant surprises. So there's some information on a premium call. It told me that wasn't in my bundle, and it prompted the intelligence to raise that up and tell me that's an exceptional event. Similar things, let's have a look for some interesting stuff. Here we go, unusual data usage. So that was the kids on YouTube, okay? So they've used a lot of my bundle. Aura said, that's unusual behavior. I should alert you to that. Avoids any surprises. But you'll see in each of these things, I have a pause or a sign-out option. I'm in control of whether Aura uses that data and collects that data. I can delete it. I can stop it recording and using it today, or I can continue and see the benefits of that. And that's even more interesting when it's things like my location. So if I was to say something like, let's just go to, where's my purse? So this is an example of IoT. So if you have a tag that says where your devices are, this one was left in our Barcelona office, unfortunately, so I have to wait a while till I get that back. It shows you where it is, right? Super simple. How would we have done that in the past? But Aura sees all of the data, all of the information across all of our services, and I can stop it recording. I can stop it using that because it's my data, right? The last concept, which I'd like to introduce you to, is this idea of discovery. How do we use data with other companies? As I said at the start, it's only valuable when it's shared, when it's put to work, and when it's put to use. So we have trusted partners that range from internal services. So Niji at the top there is about protecting your data using the network, right? Not a virus app or anything, but actually the power of the network to give you control of your data. Safety Check is a deal we have with Facebook, very topical given the terrorist activity at the moment, but when Safety Check is activated, if you're not logged in, you don't see the messages. But now, of course, we know where all of our customers are. So once Facebook tells us that incident has happened, we can alert them. They can reassure their friends and family before they would have otherwise done. And maybe if it's still an ongoing incident, save their lives. There's an example from UNICEF we're working with around Latin America and using our crowd data to understand epidemic propagations. We also have similar ones around earthquake responses in Chile recently. But it can also generate value for you. So these examples here are saying, well, we would like to use your calls or your location to save you money on your car insurance or your house insurance. And it's very, very clear what information is used, what information leaves, and what the benefits are to you. Super transparent, super simple. And you can review and you can see what all the ones you have at any one time. So these are the ones I've signed up to for this demo. And there's the Latin American credit scoring, promotions. I can earn money by engaging more deeply in brands I like, and so on. So let's wrap up. There's tremendous potential for individuals, businesses, and society if we can be trusted to share data, or if we can trust companies and share data with them. But there are risks, right? People don't really think of that as a good idea at the moment. So it's not sufficient to simply write more regulation that adds more paragraphs to our terms and conditions and our cookie laws and our privacy policies and all of this stuff, right? It doesn't help because no one reads it anyway. So how do we make it fully transparent, super simple, and put them in control of their own data and put it to work for their benefit, not for the company's benefit? And cognitive intelligence makes it super simple, as you saw, and trust makes it all possible. And that's my story. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. That was absolutely wonderful, fascinating talk. I'm just, presumably, by the way, Telefonica pays your bill.
Telefonica does, yes.
You're not paying, you work for them, obviously.
Yes.
Okay,
I can
good.
add data, but it costs me nothing, which is a great perk.
That's good. Look, I'm just going to jump in with my question. Hands up if you have questions, but I'm going to jump in first if you don't mind. Let me ask you this. You talked about Parkinson's and identifying that through phone calls, and that's absolutely fascinating. But it's still the humans putting the pieces together, the pieces of the puzzle together. When will machines start to actually identify those insights for us on our behalf? Because that's then gets to another level, right?
Well, that's already happening. So artificial intelligence has had a step change now from being kind of logical and procedural and programmatically based to machine learning. Obviously, you have to set it up so it learns, but now using the massive data sets that we have available online, or very specific things like oncology, X-rays or MRIs and things, machines are getting really good, in fact, better than humans at identifying cancer, better than humans at recognizing images, better than humans at speech recognition. I mean, that's a cheap phone, and it was hearing what I was saying, translating it into English, it live, right? Clever stuff. So about 95% of the things we say pardon, right? But it's now achieved greater levels than that. So machines are already learning. Someone had to program them to learn, but now they've done that, they're learning.
Thank you. Do you want to just give your name before you ask your question?
Yes, Eduardo Rodriguez from OECD Business School. You emphasize the importance of trust with
Absolutely.
clients. I was just wondering, how do you generate trust within your own organization in order to create a data-driven culture so that different teams within the organization are willing to share information and better collaborate?
Yes, so the question, in case you didn't hear it because of the mic, the question was how do we generate trust within our organization? So I've talked about generating customer trust, but how to ensure that the behaviors, I think this is what you're saying, the behaviors every day of all of our employees reinforce that trust and allow us to use data internally. Is that right? Okay, so the first thing, that's a cultural change as well as a technical change. The risk is, of course, people take short-term decisions to optimize short-term revenues that aren't in the best interest of customer trust. So we have to change the incentives, we have to call out the bad behaviors, and we have to make sure that in meetings everyone's saying, what about the customer? What impact does that have on our customer? And that has to become a behavior that is throughout our organization. Is that what you meant? Yeah.
No, basically just because sometimes it is clear that we have a lot of data that is being generated within the organization, but many times people, different teams within the organization are not willing to share information with other teams. So you create a sort of organizational silos, and
you do.
Yeah.
Yes, information is power. So people hoard it. Yes, that's right. Well, again, that's where technology helps because, as you saw, in order to do those cross-service kind of queries, Aura has to see everything, okay, with your permission, but Aura has to see everything. So what we're doing is we are harmonizing all of our data sets. So our operating businesses grew up in each of our 20 countries individually, so they have different systems, different architectures, different technologies. So we have to make sure that all of the data is in a common language, all of the data is defined in the same way, and that we're using the same tools to be able to share that information. And it's like Amazon did with their API memo 10 years ago or so. If you don't build it in this way and it's not open to everyone else, you're fired. That was Amazon's version. I think ours will be less extreme. But it's that kind of thing that causes behavior to change. It causes people to share and collaborate rather than hoard.
Got a question at the back.
I'm really curious about the question around trust and with that security, because having all your information with one organization sounds great if everything works, but it also, there's a massive cybersecurity risk, and there's not been any behavior by organizations or corporations to give any consumer a belief that there is going to be, that information is going to be treated as securely as possible. So how has Telefonica looked at cybersecurity? Are you looking at open sourcing everything so that we can all sort of have a true, because it only takes one person essentially to be able to have every single thing about me available to somebody who wants to do me harm?
Okay, so firstly, we're not hoarding your Instagram accounts and your Facebook. This is Telefonica's data that Aura is looking at. So this is information we already have, but we're putting it to use to help you going forwards. Obviously, there are well-established security principles that we absolutely adhere to and do everything we can to keep it as secure as possible. And that means separating your identifiers from your data, encrypting things, and so on. If the question relates to how we interact with companies like Facebook or your bank or your insurer, then what we do is we ensure that only the minimum insights are shared with that company. So let me give you a simple example. If I protect your credit card when you travel, so the fraud algorithms, and we're all traveling a lot, I imagine, when we go abroad, sometimes your credit card doesn't work because they've said, can it be you because you were over here an hour ago, right? And your credit card's blocked, and that's embarrassing. Well, once, with your permission, we simply say to the bank, here's a transaction. Is John in the vicinity of that transaction? Yes or no, right? So the only thing that's shared is yes or no, or a probability, in fact. We don't let the bank follow you around. We don't share your information with the bank. We answer a question with an insight that says, yes, it's credible that that could be you, right? So, and we design that security in from the ground up. So minimum insights, maximized privacy, and the services that you value. A win-win.
Okay, I think we've got time for 2 questions. We've got a lady over here.
Hi.
No, not yet.
No.
Keep speaking, yeah.
The yellow mic, yeah.
Oh.
I
Yeah.
can hear
Yes,
you, I'll
yeah.
repeat it.
No, keep.
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
perfect.
Yay. It will be a very short question.
That's
I'm
okay.
just wondering about how are you dealing with IPR? Which IPR are you using in order to maintain trust and to make it also simple use for the users?
So the word I missed was...
IPR, property rights. Which
IP
kind
rights.
of, if you can talk about this point. Yeah, thank you.
So that's actually not a short question at all. That's a potentially massive question because it depends on what we're trying to protect. So we're working with other partners. So for instance, at the moment, our cognitive intelligence is supplied by Microsoft, their LUIS framework. So that's their property right. Our approach to this, we have some patents in place, and that's our bit that says what are the inferences and the way that we combine information from our network, from our products and services, from the IT systems that fuel Aura. So it depends on what we're doing. We're not starting everything from scratch because that would be foolish. The natural language processing, actually your phone these days is capable of doing some of that stuff on its own, which is just phenomenal, isn't it? So that's, in this case, Samsung's intellectual property. And we combine all these things together and we build something great as a result of all of those components from all of these partners.
My name is John de Jong.
Hello.
I would like to ask you, we hear of these kind of databases being hacked. So the credit cards of 3 million people being hacked. Mm-hmm. What can we do to trust a company like you are presenting that it will not be hacked?
Well, it's an arms race. So unfortunately, it's hard to offer absolute guarantees with any of this because it only takes a discontented employee or something. There's human as well as technical risks. But we do everything we can to minimize those. As I said to the earlier question, world-class security, ensuring things are encrypted as soon as possible and wherever possible, ensuring things are aggregated if the individual data isn't necessary, and only sharing the minimum. We never sell data, right? So because we don't have to earn our living by selling data, it's in our interest to protect your data rather than let it out. And so we're slightly different to some of the other companies. But it is a risk. It'd be wrong of me to say so. It's always a risk. But we do everything we can to protect it. And again, remember, we have information already, but we don't keep any more information unless you ask us to, unless you want us to. And that's why everything starts with trust. You have to see it's in your interest and there are benefits for you from us doing this. And that's the different way of thinking about it. How do we help you?
Thank you, John.
Okay.
That was an incredibly wonderful and inspiring and informative talk. Let's give him a big round of applause. So, if you weren't here for the first talk, it was because it got cancelled, and so anyway, we rescheduled that. Nicholas Hahn has arrived. His talk is on the singularity, and that'll be in 15 minutes. Thank you very much. We can give John another round of applause. That was fascinating. Thank you very much. Okay. Sorry, we couldn't get you to your question. Yeah. What was it, by the way? Just we can go.
What I've been struggling with these days is trying to reconfigure this whole idea that this is a consumer issue. Essentially, I see this as a 21st century labor union. If I'm